of Telltale Games, Dan Connors and Kevin Bruner.
Hi. All right, well, it's great to be here at PAX. We're super excited to, PAX is one of those things, and Penny Arcade, one of those organizations that have been part of our lives since we started Telltale. And to see what they've built and see the community, the way they've been able to bring the community together and create a real good atmosphere around video games has just been super positive. So, kudos to Mike and Jerry and Robert and everyone involved at Penny Arcade. Well, negative crap around games. It's good to be around people that just love it and are passionate about it.
And kudos to you guys for coming out in the cold and the snow.
Thank you, Austin. So, I know you guys are probably familiar with this work. This is Telltale a la now. And we're really proud of everything we're able to accomplish, but I'm wondering who in the room knows these guys. Oh, not those guys. All right. A couple, yeah. Go ahead.
About that guy?
All right, and if you know this guy, we're sorry. I found this on my, Hector. Yes. I found this installed on my iPad the other day by one of my kids. I was pretty, if you play, anyway. How about, well, everyone knows those guys.
And that guy. And now maybe the most obscure. Puzzle Agent fans out there?
We saw Graham Annable, who created Grickle, the other night, and I don't know if everyone saw him at the Oscars, that he was up for a nomination for his work with Box Trolls and everything else. So part of our Telltale family that's gone on and done great things. So, we wanted to come out here and talk about Telltale and how we started it. I think Kevin and I are the first two people to ever do a story time together. So we wanted to tell you the story of how we came to build Telltale and why, and how two guys like us, grew this thing to what it is. So we're going to start at the very beginning. Oftentimes when we talk about Telltale and our motivation for Telltale, we talk about the importance of storytelling and more so, and how universal it is. And more importantly, we talk about it as the fact that interactive has been part of storytelling since the very beginning as well. The idea of sitting around a campfire telling a story. It's something where there's a storyteller and listeners, and the storyteller tells the story based on what the listeners want to hear, what they want to talk, how they want to see the story go. And we feel like that's been at the core of it since the beginning of storytelling.
And then it gets kind of a little bit more interactive for the modern age with like all choose your own adventure books, which I have a bookshelf full of choose your own adventure books when I was a kid and just read them over and over and over again. And then you get really enamored with the idea of like stories are pliable. You can make your own versions of these kind of things. And then you do that with your friends when you're in school playing D&D, when you find the great DM. Yeah? So you kind of graduate from being told stories to kind of being able to manipulate stories to you and your friends sitting around making up stories and like tabletop role-playing game and just goofing off with that. And that's really a lot of what inspired Telltale and what inspires us, is this idea that stories are kind of these toys, these curiosities that you can play with, that they're not just these passive things that you watch and you read, but they're the things that you and your friends can kind of dig dig into and do together.
I think the fact that you can have the audience participate in crafting the story is a trigger for us. And when the computer came along, in this ultimate moment in human history happened when Kevin Bruner got his first computer in 1978.
So that is me getting my TI 99-4A, which I love the hell out of that thing. I was parked in front of that thing 24 hours a day and wrote a lot of text adventures on it, and not a lot of graphics because graphics weren't a thing then.
Hence, in the great Infocom games that everyone shared that really started to start PC gaming. So I never got a computer. I'm from Boston too, and I'm not using that as an excuse for saying people from Boston aren't computer literate, but I was more playing, I had my Patriots jersey and I had my Big Jim that I got for Christmas. And he had the Kung Fu arm press, but I was using this new technology to try to get his leg to kick. And I failed. And that kind of started me on the path to what I would be, because I don't know if people know this, but I started my career in games as a tester. I started at LucasArts, and I had come out there. I was in Boston. I was born in Lynn, so I don't know if anyone knows Lynn or is from Lynn, but the cool thing about Lynn is, even in California, when you go to Lynn and say, "Oh, I'm from Lynn," and they go, "City of Sin." That's where I'm from, or born anyway. My mom's from there. So I was here, and I went to UMass Amherst. Yeah. And kind of in 1990, the path from UMass Amherst to San Francisco kind of went through Colorado up to San Francisco if you went west. And I was with friends of mine from LucasArts and said, "Hey, they're hiring for testers down at LucasArts. You wanna do that?" And I said, I don't know. It's not really my thing. I don't really know much about it. He said, "Well, look, come over and play a PC game at me tonight." And we played Indie. So come over and play Indie, and then go in for the interview. So they asked me the next day. I talked to them. It was all good. We were getting along. They said, "Well, you played PC games before?" And I said, "Well, Indie." "Oh, that's great. You're hired." So I went in for my first day and sat down. And they said, "Dan, just go ahead and start the game. Go ahead and play." So I sit down. They said, "What you got to do?" Does anyone know DOS? Does anyone remember DOS? All right, so you guys will appreciate this. So they said, just play. So it's my first day on the job, and I walk in the test pit, and there's Captain Trips, who is Joe Ashburn. He's in his tie-dye and his sandals, and there's Bill, who does all the flight sims, the Korean War veteran. I mean, it's everything you want in a test pit that you can imagine. I sit down to play, and I say, "Okay, I'm ready." I said, "What do I do?" And they said, "Well, just type in CD ... I said, "All right, CD ... That's easy." And this is what they meant. This is DOS. CD ... It was Day of the Tentacle. And I'm like, "Okay, well, this is easy. I can do this. This is CD ... So I type. So I look at the C prompt. I say, "Oh, CD ... Right? And I'm like, "Okay, it didn't start. Hey, Cap, I typed in CD ... and I got this. Syntax error. Uh-oh, I think I broke the machine. You know, it's still my first day." So I look at Cap. I say, "Cap, CD ... is a syntax error." He's like, "Oh, don't worry about that. It's CD ... I said, "Oh, CD ... which was the same thing." So I looked at them, and all of a sudden the real smart guy comes over and says, "I can't get this started. I think I got my first bug." The real smart guy comes over and types it, looks at me, he's like, types in CD ... game starts. I'm like, "Oh, that's great. He never told me what he typed." I'm like, "That's great, I'm playing." And later I heard that he went back to my boss and said, "See, that new guy's an idiot." But I realized something there, that user flow at that point was not only not user friendly, it was actually user hostile. When you verbally gave out how to launch the game, it sent you to a syntax error. And that was the state of the games industry in 1992. So really only smart people played, or people who kind of obviously knew what to do. And it's not super complicated, but I'm no programmer. So, I use that ability as that perspective of someone who doesn't understand to help bring new people in as games got more complicated from going from DOS to loading CD-ROMs to Win95. Oh God, right? That whole transition was just nasty, and my ability to have no idea what I was doing really brought me to a place where I helped people figure out how to do what to do. So it was a great time to be doing that. And at the same time, Kevin was doing his thing, and was working on videos. I'll let him tell you about that.
So at the same time, I was trapped in Florida, and this is a picture of me probably in the same time, 90, 91, 92, playing with my video toaster. Remember video toasters? Okay. So that was like my Amiga, my tricked out Amiga that I was into, and it didn't quite click computer and games for me yet. So I was doing all this multimedia stuff. This is the little recording studio that I had way back in the day. Me and all of my friends, some of whom are actually here today, because we still obsess about this stuff. But this was a little community of people who were using technology to make videos. A friend of mine was a Steadicam operator, another friend of mine was a video editor. I was doing weird computer stuff and technology stuff, still hacking a lot. I had a Power Mac at home that I was all obsessed with. And we kept we were all in this storytelling. We were in film, we were in television, we were in kind of media. And we kept trying to mash all of these things together continually. I remember we were at a friend of mine's house, we had just finished watching Chinatown, and we all looked to each other and were like, that would make an awesome game. And we started trying to figure out how to gamify Chinatown. And we actually, we were obsessive about this stuff. And we actually put together a prototype interactive movie in 1994 that we shot it. My friend Kevin shot it, my friend Noy edited it, and I coded it up and put it together. My friend Tim, who you'll see in a minute, starred in it. Actually, no, we didn't put Tim.
It's you.
In there. It's me. We put a me shot in it.
But in 1994 was a time where video and games were starting to come together, and kind of the early passes at trying to pull stuff together, pull storytelling and game interactivity together.
Yeah, this is when QuickTime had just come out, and computers could play back video, and it was getting really, really interesting. So here's a really quick clip of me playing Louis the Beatnik Bookie. From this interactive movie prototype we did. We shot about 60 minutes of raw footage, and it turned into a 9-minute playable thing that you could click through, and we desperately tried to find the actual playable version, which we'll turn up somewhere, and then we have to find this antique Mac to play it on. But here's a little of an interactive movie prototype from 1994. There's no audio because there's time code screaming over the top of this. So that's all there is there. But we were... Thanks, Joe. But we had all these new toys to play with. We had these new digital video editors. We had these cameras. We had computers that we could program. And we were just continually just trying to mash all this stuff together. And we didn't... it didn't fit together really well and really organically, but it was all of our favorite things, and that kind of goes back to like when you were playing Dungeons and Dragons, and even back then, writing utilities on the computer to help manage stats and things like that. And it's just kind of this obsessive desire to just like take everything that you love and try to make it all play nice together. So that's one of the things that I was doing. You were also obsessing about trying to play with cameras.
I was in the embarrassing film clip part of the presentation. I was working with Dave Grossman and Jesse Clark, who I worked on Sam and Max with. I met Dave at Lucas, and we put together a local cable access show in Marin. It ran from like '93 to '97. We really worked hard on it and did a lot of work on our writing and acting and everything else. And it was a real early start of just working on storytelling and story beats and trying to make something compelling. And I dug the video up, and I thought my performance was much better. But this here is this. In this part, I'll lead it in a little bit. Dave wrote a part for me where it was a guy with a really bad hangover who didn't say anything except and he realizes he had sold his soul to Satan for beer the night before. And in this scene, this is the realization. So this portrayal by me is all acting and has nothing to do with my attitudes or proclivities at the time. So here we go.
Standing around. Time's a wasting. Remember our deal? Get to work, Wham. Nostra.
You can also see the blossoming of my management style there for people who are currently get to work, Wham.
And that was broadcast.
Lots of times at like 2 a.m. in the morning, which was good. People tended to call me at 2 a.m. and say, "I just saw you on TV," which was a highlight for me. So we were doing all of this together at Lucas, and I think at this point Kevin started trekking across country.
I was working for a little video game developer in Florida that went under, and I was really desperate to, I was making helicopter games where you flew helicopters around and just blew the crap out of everything. That was a lot of fun, but I really wanted to work with little people. I really wanted to get like human animation and that kind of stuff, and nobody was doing it in town. So I started looking for work and ended up going out to Lucas, where they showed me a game that they wanted me to work on that had little people in it. It had little skeleton people in it, which turned out to be Grim Fandango. And Grim, and we just released the anniversary edition of Grim that Tim and the folks at Double Fine just remastered, and there's developer commentary in there, which is really awesome. It was fun to get the band back together and participate in that. But this is LucasArts, kind of the day I showed up, and this is actually during production on Grimm. But this was like magic to me. This was coming from a place where me and kind of 3 or 4 of my geekiest friends would huddle together and try to mash storytelling and characters and computers together kind of obsessively to come to a place where there were literally hundreds of people doing it at the same time was really, really magical. And this was a very great time at Lucas because you could go around the building and there was a Star Wars Racer in production and Grimm and Masters, and I'm thinking of literally going around the building. It was Racer, this was the Grimm pit, Indy, Hal's Indy. Rogue Squadron was happening, which was really cool. Jedi Knight expansion pack was happening. Guys like Ray Gresco were walking around the hall, and you could be like, dude, that's freaking Ray Gresco.
With Larry Holland and the team at Philly Games.
Yeah, and my office was right next to Tim's, which was just an awesome experience. Just sit there and
meet Tim. So these are some of the things that were going on, and some of the things that Kevin and myself both worked on kind of while we were at Lucas, and eventually we ended up as a producer and lead programmer on this title.
In a world where evil lurks around every corner, where villains rule the streets with impunity, and hope is a four-letter word, a mighty force for justice will return. And heaven help the guilty.
You crack me up, little buddy. Commissioner, how's the rash?
Why won't you just die? This is so degrading.
Shut up and dance. Holy bouncing Buddha, Max. We're in 3D.
It's been done.
Still breaks my heart.
Coming soon or not.
So we were working on Sam and Max together as producer and programmer, and it was a really important time for the two of us to really figure out how we thought about the world and things. And I think something that's important when we started Telltale, we were coming from a place of people who work in positions that enable the creative and help create a process for the creative to succeed. And that's why Telltale has been so prolific in the amount of content it's put out versus the strategy of, I have the greatest idea that has ever been thought and I'm going to make it a reality, which is a different business model, and some people some people can pull it off. But for us, it was never really about that. It was always about how do you create an atmosphere where we can do this, where we can transition into storytelling games, or we can make this happen and push interactive storytelling forward. And what do we need to do from a tools perspective? What do we need to do from a code perspective? What do we need to do from a structure perspective, distribution perspective? These are all the things that were on our brains all the time.
And the first thing we needed to do was
Get out of
LucasArts. They were going all Star Wars, moving to the Presidio.
The new president had come in, and we had been at the time, I think, well, I was there for 10 years, so I think it had been a new president every 2 years. So Simon's time was up. Simon Jeffrey, who was a great guy, who did a lot to bring back the LucasArts stuff, and a new guy was coming in, and this guy was coming in from outside the industry. He was from marketing, and he was outside. He was going to turn it around. He had a great new strategy, which was build the highest quality games on time and on budget. So I looked at Kevin and I said,
That's a great idea.
That's great. Great game plan, Belichick. Let's do this. So we were out of there, and we decided to set up Telltale. And I think this next one is Kevin's home office.
Yeah, this is literally day one of Telltale. We left Lucas on a Friday, and we took, so that's a little LucasArts swag there. And it's interesting, because this is literally like, okay, we're going to try and do this thing, and we're going to fire up the machine and start writing a new game engine from scratch with an empty editor. And but it's one of the things that's interesting, it's telling, is this is one of my little favorite artifacts, my little tchotchkes that I have in my house, which is this old television. And again, it's like this obsessive kind of, and being enamored with serialized storytelling and television, and just growing up in this age with like the dawn of cable television and mass media and all these things. But this is literally day one Telltale. This is a little 500 square foot apartment that me and my girlfriend lived in, and we just set up shop and said, let's go ahead and make this. And we Dan we invited a few people over. The famous Brendan Q. Ferguson was there. A couple, John Scrow, who's still at Telltale, and a few other, just a handful of people. And one of the first things we did was we looked at one of my favorite games, because I was like, okay, we're going to make this new storytelling company. So we have to look at like a game that was one of the most important and kind of shaping my view of the world games that we could do. So we all sat around and we played The Witness from Infocom, which is a game I played when I was a kid. I was a big text adventure, still very much into the interactive fiction scene as a consumer. I don't write any of it, but there's amazingly interesting work. But this is one of the things that we looked at originally. We had just come off of Freelance Police, and we knew that, writing and comedy was really good. But I mean, Telltale literally started with, let's look at paragraphs of text, and let's look at interactive storytelling, all the way back to basically everything we could think of. And we played a bit. We didn't finish Witness, but we played a bit of it. I was like, come on, let's keep playing. And we're like, oh, let's start talking about graphics. But if you haven't played old text adventures, they're easy to get your hands on. They play in browsers now, and that kind of thing. But it's really interesting. It's a very different way of using computers and stories together than what you might be familiar with outside of Telltale. It's not The Sims or GTA or any of these kind of skill-based things. It's very grounded in writing and a very novel way of.
And we talked a lot about how can we give a graphical presentation to this? How would you support this type of thing? That was a big thing that we talked about a lot, because it offered so much freedom to be able to do what you thought you wanted to do at any moment. And that was a big thing that we talked about early on. What would this look like updated? So it was a big inspiration for us.
And how many of you have played a Telltale game with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your kids, your family, a small group of friends? So one of the reasons that this game was so important to me was this is a game I played with, this and many text adventures, that I played with my dad when I was a little kid. And it was so remarkable for me to have something that I was really passionate about that I could share with my dad and that he got into as well. And certainly when we started Telltale, this idea of making games that were fun to play with your girlfriend or your wife or your kids, to kind of recapture that feeling of a shared experience. Because this was the era where like super high-end FPSs were kind of the norm, and it would be a very kind of isolated solo, maybe a little online play. But we really wanted to capture this idea that stories are things that are shared, and they're shared experiences, and a lot of that is trying to recapture some of the things that were happening when you could play games like this. Old adventure games, you get stuck on a puzzle, and you could spend a week with your friends, and your friends would try to feed you hints.
They didn't have facts.
Yeah, I remember like when Myst came out, and it was fantastic, because Myst is the first graphic adventure game that made me feel like I was playing a text adventure, and everybody was playing Myst. And it was awesome, because it used to be like the old text adventure games where you go to school and be like, I'm stuck on this puzzle, and your friend would try to kind of nudge you through it. We were doing that at work now. Everyone was playing, like, how do you get off whatever island you were stuck on? And it really captured that kind of social kind of water cooler effect that it felt like kind of had eroded away from games. And that's one of the things that I think at Telltale we were able to bring back to the table. And it's fun to play with a couple of people sitting around a couch, and it's fun to get on the internet and compare your stats about what choices you made. And a lot of it is grounded in just kind of trying to recreate some of the magic that these older games had.
We walked through this, and we walked out of Lucas and started working towards our business plan immediately. We had to have our business plan ready. We walked out on like April 14th, My wife told me she was pregnant on April 16th, and we tried to have a business plan ready for E3 by like May 3rd. So we were cranking, and this is from our first business plan, which this is miraculous for really two reasons. One, how true Telltale's been able to kind of stay to this nascent vision. And it's not exact, and this got reformed over time, but also how putrid of a slide it is. And that we actually, this really made Kevin and I realize that art and all of that were going to be real talent was going to be real necessary on the art and graphic design.
We figured we probably should hire an art director.
But it certainly this, and then and the other thing we did, we started working on our first game, which was Telltale Texas Hold'em. And I don't know if anybody's played this, but we started working on this. There's a couple key things for this. One thing, we really wanted something where the user was doing things that the characters would have to respond to, and the characters would have to understand what the player was doing by clicking the button. So if they were raising, the characters would all respond with a big raise comment. So it was very important to build characters that responded. And it was also important that they all had no legs. Because we didn't have much money and the whole thing.
When we made this, we called in every favor that we had. So this was all like volunteer artists sneaking hours here and there, and volunteer voice talent. Brendan is actually the voice of Theodore of Dude Bro there, and I mean, literally just scraping by, like anybody who could animate anything for us, anybody who could do some sound recording for us, who could write some music for us.
I wrote a lot of dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, it was, everybody was pitching in. This was a real super scrappy effort, and it's still for sale today. If you go to Steam and buy the Telltale Everything Pack, which you should go to Steam and buy the Telltale Everything Pack as quickly as possible. It's included in there, and it's funny because this was in some regards it was like a slug project that we were just like, let's see if we can build anything, and that's why it's like didn't have legs. It's like, let's keep it simple. Let's just see what we can get to the screen as quickly as possible. And poker was all the rage on TV.
Texas Hold'em was hot at that point. And we put it on, we put it on for sale at telltalegames.com. So it was also our first product testing. And all of this was important, like the horrible business slide, the Texas Hold'em game, and actually going to market. These were all things where we learned incredible things. Like one of our first investors, angel investors, we were trying to get to invest in us. We said, we have this great Hold'em game. Check it out. What do you think? It's really cool. And he played it, and he looks, and he says, shouldn't there be a lady with a bikini? And I was like, hey, Shaky's not getting a bikini. But we realized we were misaligned. Our perception of what we were building versus what the Texas Hold'em market might have wanted was just, we weren't in sync. We weren't in the right place. So we realized we had to really understand the audience we were selling to, and it was important to get that knowledge and get that understanding. And then that slide in our business plan evolved over like the next 7 months. And finally, the e-commerce piece, we could only take money from half the people that we're trying to buy. So if you're setting up a business, obviously that's not a good success rate. So all of these things allowed us to start the process of working Telltale and massaging Telltale and building it to what 10 years later would lead to, or 8 years later would lead to Walking Dead.
You think we would have known, because one of the first things that happened was we were like, hey, we're going to do poker because it's all over TV, and it totally makes sense. And Brendan was like, I don't know how to play poker. Because we were like, we're going to do the social aspect of poker. It's like playing poker with your friends. So Brendan was trying to learn how to play poker in an online poker forum, right? It was just like one of these Java script-based kind of things. And he was having fun with it. I was sitting next to him. And I noticed his seat at the virtual table that somebody was like, like Bob 891 or something. And I was like, Brendan, where are you at? What URL are you at? And I go in and I create an account called Bob 892. And I sit next to Bob 891. And I open the little chat window and I start screwing around with Bob 891. I'm like, no way, Bob 891, I'm Bob 892. And this turns out to be way more entertaining to Brendan and I than poker. So I'm like, hold on, Brendan, wait a minute, and I leave. And I bring up a website of Carl Sagan lectures. And then I log in as Carl Sagan. And I start talking smack to everybody. And I'm like, Brendan's like, ooh, Carl Sagan's here. Ooh, what are you gonna do? And I'm chatting back, I'm like, I'm gonna kick all of you guys' ass, that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm going all in, and I'm like just trash talking. But then like every fourth line, I would copy and paste a chunk out of a Carl Sagan lecture and put it in there. And everybody else, Brendan and I are rolling on the ground. We're just having the time of our lives. And everybody else in this poker room is getting so pissed off at us. We're just like, we're here to play poker. And that just gives you an idea of kind of how much we had to learn when we said, you know what? It's 2004. We're going to make a comedy poker game and start our company on comedy poker. We didn't know how to make poker. We didn't know why people were playing poker online. And then everyone wanted to bet real money in this thing. And we're like, no, it's about the jokes. And again, kind of like this ridiculous obsession we have with this junk is, how many people have played Poker Night at the Inventory? So the press release for Poker Night at the Inventory proclaimed that it was the Citizen Kane of comedy poker games. And we stand by that today. It is the Citizen Kane of comedy poker games. But like figuring out like the things that we really cared about, the things that really kind of entertained us, and how to make a business around it and do that. Like we knew we were gonna have to self-publish because Sam & Max, which we loved, had just gotten canceled. And publishers weren't interested in making this kind of content. And this is just an example of like, we wanted to hit the ground running, we wanted to be dialogue driven, we wanted to be character driven, we wanted to get up to speed as fast as possible. And one of the first things we did, what, do you want to start a property? Oh yeah, you can.
So this notion of building it and getting it started was something that's been very important to us throughout the iterative process and refining things. And Kevin was telling me about an interesting story that he had just read of something. The Carmack.
Carmack just tweeted an interesting thing. John Carmack, who I follow, I don't know John Carmack, met him a couple of times, but he tweeted this thing where there was this pottery class where at the beginning of the semester, half the class was told that they were going to be graded purely on quality, and the other half of the class was going to be graded purely on quantity. And the anecdote was that at the end, the quantity half of the class actually did best in quantity and quality, with the idea being that the quality people kind of obsessed over their one piece that was going to get graded on and tried to make it perfect, where the quantity people were, since they were focused on quantity, were making mistakes along the way and learning how to correct those mistakes. And we're definitely cut from the practice makes perfect. Iterate, like work as quickly, just get as much as possible. I often say, like, if we have to make 100 stupid decisions to get to the one good decision, then let's make 100 stupid decisions right now. Let's start making stupid decisions as quickly as possible.
The beauty of it is we have all of you to tell us about them.
Yes.
So we can respond.
And it's interesting because Telltale is creeping up on its 100th episode. So it's been a long road, but it starts with some pretty flawed ideas, but a passionate kind of execution and willingness to learn.
So this is the early Telltale offices, and I remember we walked in and Kevin called me up and Troy, and I was I was off. I had to go to a wedding that weekend, and Kevin's like, "You're gonna love this office. We found the perfect place. This is the best place. You're gonna love this." So I said, okay, great, and I came back on Monday and I drive by and I look at the address and I'm down next to the sewage treatment plant and the dump is across the street and I just passed San Quentin and I said, okay, I'm gonna love this place. So I pull in and come in there and I'm looking around and look at the space and I look at the window and there's a hole in the window and I said, and the landlord was there. And I said to Kevin, I said, I said, what's that hole? And Kevin says, yeah, to the landlord. He says, yeah, are you gonna fix that bullet hole? And he's like, look, it's not a bullet hole. And it's the least of your worries, you're starting a company, so. So we took it. Yeah.
The best thing about that office was it was at the end of a warehouse, and it was a one-room space that you could fit like 12 desks in. And the bathroom was in the corner with a little wall around it. And 12 people in one kind of office room where the bathroom is like, it's like in a garage, or the room is like a garage, like a bathroom you'd see in a garage. There is no modesty in that.
It was like an embarrassing moment every, 4 hours, I guess, but he was definitely right that the bullet hole was the least, or the not a bullet hole was the least of our worries.
And believe it or not, this is not that office.
Yeah, this isn't that office.
This is the upgraded office. This was office number 2. My favorite thing about this office was one day we came in, and right in front of your office, the air conditioner had been, the drain or whatever had clogged up. And we came in, and one of these acoustic ceiling tiles was like completely pregnant, full of stagnant, nasty water. And we're like, what are we gonna do? And we're sitting there scratching our head, trying to figure out how we're gonna deal with this whole thing. And then it just kind of went, and it was just this disgusting mess on the floor. And I remember it fondly.
Yes. And the thing of note, so everyone can remember this office, is it was above a hypnosis business, a woman out of business for hypnosis. And we were working on Sam & Max season 1 at the time, which also happened to be about hypnosis. So it definitely was the definition of not an accident, whatever it was. Somehow it happened. So that was our second office.
So then we get into Telltale. So there's kind of 3 eras of Telltale that I think are interesting to talk about. And in the first era, starting with Sam & Max season 1, we were making individual episodes, kind of Seinfeld. These are all very self-contained. They're not serialized at all. Each game was a little game that you could play all by itself. So we did that with Sam & Max season 1. CSI, not a lot of people these days remember that we made CSI games, but we made 4 CSI games. We were probably the only people in the game world who went after this, and we're like, we want to be the team that makes the CSI games, because they were self-contained stories, they were little cases. We did this with Ubisoft, and they're actually really good. They're good early Telltale, really entertaining, well thought out. They're CSI games, so they're forensic. The best thing is, in our first CSI game we did, which is this 3 Dimensions of Murder, there's a case that we designed for that, which happens at a gaming convention.
That's right.
And something horrible had happened. A game called Fuzzy and Bill had been canceled. And the lead programmer had lost it and murdered the producer. Fuzzy and Bill. That is case number 2 of CSI 3 Dimensions of Murder. And thanks to Jay Cohen and
they let it through.
Who were totally into the idea
James Regan
as well. James Regan and the guys at Ubisoft. So if you ever feel like you really need to do something really passive aggressive, you can design a game where you kill your old boss. So we got that out of the way. And this was another thing. We were doing a series of games based on Bone. And how many people are familiar with Bone? Yeah. So Jeff Smith, our comic book roots, Telltale had a lot of comic artists. Graham Annabelle, who we talked about before, who just directed Box Trolls, was our first creative director, and he was a comic artist. When we reached out to Jeff Smith and he said that he would let us do a Bone game, that was pretty amazing to us. We had a lot of respect for him. We were talking with Steve Purcell on Sam & Max. So these were 2 kind of external creatives that we had a lot of reverence for, and we're really excited that they would let us work on their stuff. And CSI was a name brand. I mean, we were working with the show actors and the show writers there as well. So this was like a big endorsement to kind of to Telltale and to our egos to say, like, people actually will let us work on this stuff.
And we had one of everything. We had a classic adventure game, we had a mainstream television license, and we had a comic book license and a new creative that had never been a game before. So we were really getting a feel for what these different franchise types would require.
You can see right there, we made the #1 interactive crime-solving series. Who can argue with that? It's printed. But these were all individual one-episode, they weren't serialized.
Season 2, we finished this phrase with season 2 of Sam and Max, where we started pulling the stories together. Now that's the next phase.
Yes. So then we ended up with this serialized version of Telltale, and this is probably a little bit more familiar, but these are still logic-based point-and-click adventure games. So that's like Sam and Max, The Devil's Playhouse, and Wallace and Gromit's Grand Adventures, Monkey Island. So that was a fantastic series.
Looks like
Sorry.
So we're going to speed it up a little bit, and we have an announcement to make. But we're going to use this part to talk about all the great partners that we've worked with through the years, from Jeff and Steve and Graham to Robert Kirkman and Bob Gale, who we'd talk about Doc Brown, what Doc Brown would do when he was young, and what he and Zemeckis would think about that. And it's just a miracle. But and Matt Chapman, who you'd write a script and then bring it in to record, and Matt would change it on the spot and become Strong Bad or Homestar or whoever. But there was this one super irritating guy who we worked with, who we've got a video for.
Looks like I'm gonna have to tear Telltale a new one. Verbally, of course. Cool game! Strong Bad cool game! Not box look under game! Or green bushes game? What is that mess? You told me you could do a blade! A blade! I thought a dialogue tree was the name of some cool alien sentient plant thing! And you, ugly glasses Telltale! You said that point and click meant pointing a gun and clicking the trigger! And thank goodness we didn't decide to name it Strong Bad's Cool Game, developed by attractive people. You guys are the ugliest scrubs I've ever seen. Okay, calm down. Keep it together. Here's what you do to save this game from certain doom. Fade in. Interior. Awesome video game. Day. In a world where reality and video games have merged in a pixelated cataclysm, can beefy, robot-panted Strongbad restore order to the galaxy, save the princess, and slay the dragon? That's all I got. I'm gonna go find the sandwich cart guy.
We're trying to be cool and look at the clock and get our presentation done. We're running a little bit behind, but we had an important announcement we wanted to make that's going to require some housekeeping. So,
besides go out and buy the Telltale Everything collection.
Besides go out and buy the Telltale Everything collection, yes.
Well, they're not going to be able to buy the Telltale Everything collection sitting from their seat.
Yeah, there's not good internet.
Is there Wi-Fi here?
Right.
So maybe it'd be more convenient.
We're going to give you all the Telltale Everything collection.
That is almost a $40 value. So the enforcers are going to come and hand out Steam codes up along the aisles, and take one for yourself and pass it along. There should be enough for everybody in each row, but be kind and take the one for yourself, and let your neighbors have the next one. And thank all of you guys for coming out.
Thank you for coming out.
We're going to keep going. And all of these games are in the Telltale Everything Pack except for the CSI games, which you have to go to. They're Ubisoft's games, they're not our games. They're excellent. I would go out and buy them. Yay! Go play some Fuzzy and Bill. So then a neat thing happened when we got into all the serialized stuff, right? We figured out that the stories and like longer season arcs were really good, but they were still puzzle-based games. And we decided kind of the next era of Telltale that started with Jurassic Park was to just really go all in with character and playable stories, take everything we had learned. And that's kind of this era of Telltale where...
this leads up to Walking Dead.
Yeah, it gets us to Walking Dead. Which, yes, Walking Dead. And a lot of things were happening there. We were becoming a better publisher. We were getting on more platforms. We were becoming more credible with our license holders, getting access to things like Jurassic Park and Back to the Future, and eventually Walking Dead.
Ian having established a production process that could allow for episodic delivery and a publishing channel, we were able to really start focusing on moving the games forward in the direction that we wanted to do with interactive storytelling and immersive choice and consequence-based gameplay. And a lot of that came from the work that went into Poker Night and JP and Back to the Future that were all evolutions towards what would eventually become The Walking Dead.
Yeah, if you had said in 2004 when we started Telltale, the Game of the Year is going to be a digitally distributed adventure game based on a television show license, I think everyone would have told you you're crazy, and we probably felt a little crazy. But when you're making interactive movies with your dragging your friends into it when you're a kid, and when you're making cable access shows, you kind of got it bad at that point. And if we're just obsessed about it long enough, eventually something is going to happen.
Yeah, we definitely at this period, each of the different games played into this as well, and it was important for us to learn from everything we were doing.
So we made Walking Dead was kind of the breakout hit where we finally were able to kind of bring all the pieces together. And since then, we did Walking Dead Season 2. We've done yes, if you played Walking Dead Season 2. How many people played Wolf? Wolf is a little magical because something really weird happened with Wolf, which is we licensed the comic, which was awesome, and then we made the game, and the game was official canon, which was fantastic. It's the first time
Bill
we made
Willingham was excellent.
Yeah, Bill was awesome to work with. And then a crazy thing happened, where then they took the game and they turned it into a comic. So this is out now. There's there's going to be 5 issues, one that covers each episode of the game. And then I guess we'll license the comic back and remaster the game. It'll be like Inception. But this is crazy cool. Like, not only did we, we were telling great stories interactively, but now I think we've really kind of reached a place where the stories we tell are richer and kind of, like we've really kind of come into our own.
This one has really makes deal making really complicated these days.
Yes. And now, Game of Thrones. Hopefully everybody out there is playing this and trying to save House Forrester. It is up to you whether they survive or not, or who survives or not.
think it's really, really great on this one that we worked so closely with George R.R. Martin and Ty Franck to find the Forrester house, and he said, you guys go ahead and help craft their story during this time frame. That was a big, big thing for us, and it's so proud to be part of their lore.
Yeah, and HBO is, top of their game from scripted narrative, and to be working with everyone at HBO is just a dream come true. I mean, they're a fantastic company to work with. But then so many people came to Telltale from Walking Dead. Because that's, that was the big breakout. And we did Walking Dead Season 2, and Wolf, and Thrones. And these are all very heavy, and we have a lot of comedy in our background. So a lot of people were surprised when we started doing Borderlands. But internally, after 2 years of sitting around tables trying to figure out how to torture Clementine, there is so much kind of pent-up comedy. We're like, hooray, fart jokes! So this series is going on right now, and if you haven't had a chance to check it out, but again, it's like working with the folks at Gearbox really is kind of a dream come true. It really does feel like we've sort of arrived in a way.
Yeah, and it's another one. The great thing about this is we've been working towards this for a long time. It's a game, and then we're providing an additional story for it, and building out that universe and making it richer is something that we feel like we can do with any medium, and all the mediums are starting to bleed together in such a way that franchises need to be thought about with all of the different components working in sync from a storytelling standpoint, from a platform standpoint, from a gameplay standpoint, and the opportunities now to really start continue pushing things forward, which is what we're always going to do, because that's what we're made to do, I suppose.
Yeah, it feels like if we went through an era of the single episodes, and then we went to serialized puzzle games, to serialized kind of role-playing, just straight story games. I don't know if you guys have read about our recent announcements of our partnership with Lionsgate, which amazing film and television company, and our announcement about super shows and things like that. We feel like we're on the cusp of entering into another phase where we'll get another 4 or 5 years of really interesting kind of different types of Telltale content coming out. So we're just going to keep, I feel like we're kind of like the Voyager, where we got our 100 episodes. We were out at the edge of the solar system as far as computers and storytelling and mushing all that stuff together is. And we don't exactly know what we're going to find next, but we're kind of floating out there.
I remember what I was going to say on the slide where I stumped before, which was when we started Telltale, adventure games were dead, like a weekly announcement. They were dead.
Because Grid killed them.
Licensed games were dead. Story was impossible to do in games. And digital distribution was never going to take off because, what was the name of that company because one of the retailers was going to stop it from ever happening. So everything we wanted to do was either dead or impossible. So if you want to build a company that can stay around for 10.5 years and move into the next generation and all of that, do everything that people say can't be done, and it'll be just fine.
So it's slightly different strategy than the make great games
on budget. Do that too.
So thank everybody for coming out. It's been awesome to open PAX. Enjoy your everything.